All right, so this is the third introductory video to Galatians. And again, the idea is if I can introduce the big ideas to you, then hopefully you'll understand when we start working through the book of Galatians passage by passage. So this part of the introduction is simply called Galatians. I want to explain who Galatians were, where they were, what was happening in history at this time. So the book of Galatians was written somewhere between 49 and 60 AD. If you have my book, you will find an error. It says BCE, but that is not correct. The book of Galatians was not written before the time of Christ, but after his earthly life. What was important? What was going on at 49 to 60 AD? Well, the most important thing to tell you is that there was not at this point two different religions, one called Judaism and one called Christianity. There was just Judaism, and within Judaism there were Jews who believed that Jesus was Messiah, and there were many Jews who did not believe that. They were unconvinced, but it would be many decades later before a rupture would happen, causing the two different groups to begin thinking of themselves as two different groups, and even more importantly, to begin thinking of themselves as two different religions. At the time Galatians is written, there is still enough goodwill and diversity within Judaism to contain both people who believe Jesus is Messiah and people who do not believe that. Galatia was in an ancient place called Anatolia, part of modern-day Turkey. It was a rural area, and as you can probably imagine, the Jewish community would have been a small minority in a rural community, which means they would have had to work real extra hard to get along with their pagan neighbors, to contribute to the common good, to keep those relationships good. But that wasn't always easy. Now, it was probably most of the time. Rome had early on acknowledged Judaism as an ancient culture, and thus Judaism was officially protected by the Roman government. They recognized that these Jewish people could be good neighbors and good productive citizens, and thus they were not forced to convert to paganism or to participate in pagan holidays, that kind of thing. But sometimes there was just a felt pressure, right? Just a felt pressure to conform. The Jewish people lived among pagans who had different mores about sex, drug use, alcohol use, the value of human life, and sometimes the pagan neighbors would look on the Jewish people with suspicion because the Jewish people would not fully embrace and participate in everything the pagans did. And so sometimes there was just an underlying hostility, but not always. There were quite a number of ancient Roman pagans who admired Jewish people, who loved the Jewish people. There were some who would even participate in a limited way in the synagogues, make contributions to the synagogues. But there were limitations. These righteous Gentiles could not become president of the synagogue. They could not marry a good Jewish boy or girl. There were parts of the celebrations that they could not participate in fully unless they converted to Judaism, unless they fully embraced the Jewish life. And what seems to be happening, that Paul is addressing in the book of Galatians, is that you have people who are coming to believe in Jesus prior to any involvement within the synagogue. And this is causing a lot of questions for the whole community. Where do these people belong? Are they pagans who believe in Jesus? Or are they now part of the Jewish community? If they're part of the Jewish community, then they need to get fully on board, right? They need to become Jewish. And so Paul writes the book of Galatians in part to say that these pagans who are embracing Jesus as Messiah, in order to be a part of the faith community, the covenant community, they do not have to take additional steps to start becoming Jewish. But that is a radical idea at the time, because at this point in time, almost all of the followers of Jesus are Jewish, and they just don't know what to do with these new believers who are not Jewish. They don't know where they fit in. They don't know how to incorporate them as a part of the community, or whether or not they should just go off and make for themselves separate communities. If so, then are they fish or fowl, or what are they if they're not Jewish followers of Jesus? And is that something that counts? Does Jesus accept them as they are? And that is the primary question of the book of Galatians.